Mrs. Walker hid my MIT acceptance letter for months while making me clean wealthy students' toilets and write their essays. When I finally confronted her, she smiled and said, "You would have struggled there. I've saved you from disappointment." I didn't say a word. That was 11 months ago. This morning, she was sitting in her car outside the school, shaking. I was 15 when I lost my scholarship to a private school. My mom had just been laid off from her accounting job, and suddenly we couldn't afford the $8,000 family contribution that came with my merit scholarship. I'd worked since 6th grade for that scholarship. Perfect grades, debate team captain, volunteer tutoring at the library every Saturday. The day I had to clean out my locker, I couldn't stop crying. Mom held me in the parking lot, promising we'd figure something out, but we both knew that school was my only shot at MIT. Then Mrs. Walker called. The guidance counselor said she'd found a solution, a special work-study scholarship that would cover everything. "Maddie's too talented to lose," she told my mother over speakerphone. "She'll do some after-school jobs around campus, help with peer tutoring. It'll look fantastic on college applications." Mom cried with relief. I remember her kissing my forehead, saying Dad would have been so proud. We signed the paperwork that afternoon. My first day back, Mrs. Walker handed me a color-coded schedule. Peer tutoring started at 3:15 with Naomi, whose family name was on the new science building. I expected to help her with calculus. Instead, she handed me her homework and left for tennis practice. When I hesitated, Mrs. Walker appeared behind me. "Leadership means supporting your peers however they need," she said, her smile never reaching her eyes. By week 2, I was doing homework for 8 different students. The campus assistance was worse. Every evening after tutoring, I reported to different dorm rooms. Officially, I was helping with organization and time management. Actually, I was scrubbing toilets, folding designer clothes, and organizing closets full of shoes worth more than our rent. The wealthy students started calling me Maddie the maid when teachers weren't around. Some were crueler, leaving messes on purpose, timing how fast I could clean. I smiled through it all because Mrs. Walker reminded me daily that ungrateful scholarship students could be replaced. My old friends stopped inviting me places. How could I explain why I smelled like bleach after school, or why I was always carrying shopping bags for other students? They saw me delivering Naomi's presentation in AP history, one I'd written at 2 a.m. after cleaning her bathroom, and assumed I was her friend now. When Naomi got into Yale early admission, everyone congratulated her on the brilliant essay about overcoming adversity. I'd written every word while she got spray tanned for homecoming. Mom never questioned why I came home exhausted, or why I stopped talking about debate team. She was working 2 jobs herself, grateful I still attended private school at all. I told her the work-study program was really preparing me for college. At night, I'd stare at my MIT brochures and tell myself this was temporary. Just 2 more years of servitude, then freedom. I still did my own homework after finishing everyone else's, maintaining my 4.0 GPA even if I was too tired to see straight. Everything shattered senior year. I'd been checking the mail obsessively for months, knowing MIT decisions would arrive in March, but May came with nothing. When I asked Mrs. Walker about my applications, she said she'd check with the college counselor. Then she smiled that cold smile and told me about an incredible opportunity. The Prescott family wanted me as their full-time assistant for senior year. "Live in position, Maddie. You'll learn so much about running a household." I refused. For the first time in 2 years, I said no. I needed to focus on my actual future, not theirs. Mrs. Walker's face went rigid. She pulled out my work-study contract and pointed to section 47B. "Student agrees to accept any assignment deemed educational by program coordinator." Refusing meant immediate expulsion, plus my mother would be sued for $120,000, the cost of my education since freshman year. "The Prescotts expect you Monday," she said. "Pack light. They'll provide uniforms." That night, I ran to the college counseling office. I knew where they kept the application records. My hands shook as I searched through the files, and then I found it. A letter for me dated from March. "Congratulations. You have been accepted to MIT with a full merit scholarship." Mrs. Walker had hidden it. I confronted her the next morning, shaking with rage. She didn't even pretend to be sorry. "You would have struggled there," she said calmly. "I've saved you from disappointment." When I threatened to expose everything, the illegal labor, the academic fraud, she opened her laptop. There I was in dozens of photos and videos, carrying Naomi's shopping bags, typing her essays, accepting cash from students. "Who do you think they'll believe orchestrated this scheme?" she asked. "The respected guidance counselor or the desperate scholarship student?" I stared at the laptop screen showing me carrying Naomi's shopping bags, while Mrs. Walker calmly sipped tea. The timestamp showed yesterday afternoon, right after I'd confronted her about the MIT letter. She'd been recording everything, preparing for this moment. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more photos. There I was, cleaning Naomi's dorm room. Another showed me typing on her laptop. A third captured me accepting an envelope of cash from another student. Each image looked damning without context. Mrs. Walker suggested I take the weekend to reconsider my options. Her voice stayed perfectly calm, like we were discussing course selections instead of my entire future. She closed the laptop and stood, smoothing her skirt. The meeting was over. I stumbled to the parking lot, my legs barely working. Inside my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Then I called her, my voice shaking with rage. I demanded to know how many other students she'd done this to. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. I could hear her breathing, calculating her response. Finally, she simply ended the call without answering. My phone buzzed immediately. A text from Mrs. Walker. My blood went cold as I opened the image. My mother at her second job, stocking shelves at the grocery store. The caption read, "Shame if her employer learned about her daughter's academic fraud enterprise." I slammed my fist against the dashboard. Mom had nothing to do with this. She'd sacrificed everything to keep me in school, working doubles to pay our bills while I maintained my grades. Now Mrs. Walker was threatening her too. A knock on my window made me jump. Jasmine, my former debate partner, stood outside looking concerned. She mentioned she'd overheard Naomi bragging at Starbucks about her maid writing her Yale essay. I studied Jasmine's face, trying to decide if this was another trap. We'd been close freshman year, before the work-study program consumed my life. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of Naomi's texts to other students, mocking how I'd spent hours perfecting her college essays while she got manicures. The messages were real. Jasmine had been collecting evidence, suspicious about why I'd disappeared from debate team. She suggested we meet somewhere away from school to talk properly. I agreed to meet her at the public library where I used to tutor, far from school surveillance cameras. We set a time for tomorrow afternoon. Jasmine squeezed my shoulder before walking to her own car. The drive home felt endless. I kept checking my mirrors, paranoid that Mrs. Walker might be following me. When I turned onto our street, my heart sank. Mrs. Walker's silver sedan sat in our driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see her inside with my exhausted mother. Mom still wore her grocery store uniform, probably called away from her shift. They sat at our small table, coffee cups between them. I crept closer to the window, staying hidden behind the bushes. Mrs. Walker was showing my mother something on her tablet. Mom's face shifted from confusion to worry as she looked at whatever was on the screen. Her hand went to her mouth. Mrs. Walker kept talking, her gestures sympathetic and concerned. She touched Mom's arm gently, playing the role of caring educator. Mom nodded along, her shoulders sagging with each word. I wanted to burst inside and tell Mom the truth, but I needed to know what lies Mrs. Walker was spreading first. I pressed closer to the window, straining to hear. The tablet screen was visible from my angle. More photos of me accepting money from students. Out of context, they looked exactly like what Mrs. Walker was claiming, evidence of an essay-selling ring I'd orchestrated. Mrs. Walker stood to leave. I ducked behind my car as she walked out. At the doorway, she patted my shoulder with false sympathy. Her whisper was ice cold. Monday morning, my office, or these go to Princeton, Yale, and Harvard admissions. She drove away without looking back. I waited 5 minutes before going inside, trying to compose myself. Mom sat at the table, staring at her cold coffee. The confrontation came immediately. Mom's voice broke as she asked if I'd been selling homework to other students. She couldn't even look at me, disappointment radiating from every word. I tried to explain, but the story sounded insane. A guidance counselor forcing scholarship students into servitude, hiding college acceptances? Mom had met Mrs. Walker multiple times. The woman had seemed so professional, so invested in my success. Mom showed me the photos on her phone. Mrs. Walker had sent them to her, each one carefully selected to support the narrative of a student running an academic fraud business. The truth felt impossible to prove. I retreated to my room, my mind racing. The MIT letter was my only real evidence, hidden in my backpack. I needed to preserve it somehow. I pulled out my phone to photograph it, then froze. Our phones connected automatically to the school's network whenever we were on campus. I'd agreed to it freshman year, standard policy for all students. If I'd taken photos at school, the IT department could access them through the cloud sync. My phone buzzed. A text from Naomi asking me to polish up her Princeton supplemental essay by tomorrow. She remained oblivious to everything happening, focused only on her college applications. I ignored her message and carefully photographed the MIT letter using my mother's old digital camera instead. No cloud storage, no network access. The memory card went into a hidden pocket in my wallet. That night, I lay awake planning. Mrs. Walker had made her first real mistake, threatening my mother. She'd revealed how desperate she was to keep me under control, but she'd also shown she'd destroy anyone to protect her scheme. Mom knocked on my door around midnight. She sat on my bed, taking my hand. She apologized for doubting me earlier. Something about Mrs. Walker's visit hadn't felt right. The counselor had been too eager to share those photos, too prepared with accusations. We talked until dawn. I told her everything. The real work-study program, the hidden acceptance letter, the years of exploitation. Mom cried when she learned what I'd endured to stay in school. She blamed herself for not seeing it sooner. By morning, we had a plan. I would meet with Jasmine as scheduled, gather whatever information she had. Mom would research Mrs. Walker's background, looking for patterns. We'd document everything before Monday's meeting. Mom insisted I still apologize to Mrs. Walker and accept the Prescott position. Not because she believed I should, but because we needed time. Open defiance would trigger immediate retaliation. We had to appear compliant while building our case. Saturday afternoon, I met Jasmine at the library. She'd brought printouts of text messages, emails, and social media posts. The evidence painted a clear picture. Wealthy students bragging about their tutors doing their work. I love how she pats the daughter's shoulder on the way out with that whisper. Nothing says I'm totally normal, like threatening teenagers in their own driveway. Jasmine mentioned her cousin graduated 3 years ago. She'd been valedictorian, full scholarship student like me. After junior year, she'd become withdrawn and strange. She never talked about school anymore, despite getting into Columbia. The pattern was becoming clear. Mrs. Walker's work-study students always disappeared after senior year. They never attended their dream schools, never pursued their planned careers. They just vanished from academic life. We spent hours creating a timeline. Jasmine had been tracking inconsistencies since sophomore year, suspicious about how certain students suddenly improved in subjects they'd previously failed. Her research revealed at least 4 scholarship students who'd followed my path. I left the library with Jasmine's research burning in my backpack. The janitor, Mr. Rodriguez, was emptying trash cans near the exit. He glanced at me, then slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand as I passed. His eyes darted around nervously before he pushed his card away. In my car, I unfolded the note. An address in neat handwriting, followed by Georgia Wells, valedictorian 2021. She'll understand. The address led to a small apartment complex across town. I knocked on Unit 3B, my heart pounding. A young woman answered, dark circles under her eyes. She started to close the door when I mentioned Mrs. Walker's name, but something in my expression made her pause. Georgia invited me inside reluctantly. Her apartment was sparse, nothing like what a Columbia graduate's home should look like. She worked nights at a distribution center, she explained, avoiding my eyes. I showed her the MIT letter. Her hands shook as she held it. She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with her own acceptance letter. Columbia, full scholarship, dated 3 years ago. She'd never enrolled. Georgia's story mirrored mine exactly. The work-study program, the wealthy students, the cleaning and essay writing. Mrs. Walker had hidden her acceptance too, claiming she'd protect Georgia from inevitable failure. The Prescott family had wanted her as live-in help. She mentioned another girl, Lisa Kim, who'd gone through the same thing. They'd connected through a mutual friend who noticed their similar experiences. Lisa worked warehouse shifts now, despite her Columbia acceptance. I asked Georgia why she never fought back. She pulled out her phone and showed me old emails. Mrs. Walker had discovered her parents' visa had expired years ago. One call to immigration would have destroyed her family. The threats went deeper than academic fraud. Mrs. Walker found each student's vulnerability and exploited it. For me, it was mom's financial stability. For Georgia, her parents' immigration status. The counselor was methodical in her cruelty. Georgia gave me Lisa's number. She warned me that Mrs. Walker had connections throughout the school system. Teachers, administrators, even some board members benefited from the arrangement. Their own children got into prestigious schools with mysteriously improved applications. Sunday morning, mom woke me early. She'd spent the night researching. Mrs. Walker had arrived at our school 8 years ago, right when the first suspicious patterns began. Before that, she'd worked at another private school that closed amid financial irregularities. Mom had also called her friend who worked in the school's finance office years ago. She remembered Mrs. Walker receiving large consulting fees from certain families, always the ones whose children showed sudden academic improvement. I texted Naomi about her Princeton essay, playing along while documenting everything. She sent me her draft, poorly written, unfocused. I saved it alongside the polished version I'd write later, evidence of the real dynamic. Mrs. Walker texted me that afternoon. She'd scheduled meetings with all my teachers for Monday morning, expressing concern about my mental health and recommending reduced responsibilities. The debate coach had already removed me as captain. I recognized the pattern from Georgia's story. First came isolation from activities and leadership roles, then reputation destruction. Finally, complete control through blackmail and manufactured evidence. Lisa agreed to meet me that evening. She brought copies of her original essays versus what was submitted to colleges. The difference was stark. Her authentic writing versus the polished pieces Mrs. Walker had forced her to create for wealthy students, then submitted under their names. Together, we identified 7 victims over 8 years, all scholarship students, all with hidden acceptances to top schools, all now working minimum wage jobs or serving wealthy families. The scope of Mrs. Walker's operation was staggering. Monday arrived too quickly. I dressed carefully, hiding my phone in my backpack to record. Mom hugged me tightly before I left, reminding me to appear cooperative while gathering evidence. Mrs. Walker's office felt suffocating. She'd arranged the photos on her desk like playing cards, each one positioned to maximize my humiliation. She explained how she'd already drafted emails to college admissions admissions offices, ready to send with one click. I apologized, playing the part of the defeated student. I agreed to accept the Prescott position, even thanking her for the opportunity. Her smile widened, believing she'd won. She handed me a contract, not just for senior year, but for 10 years of service to the Prescott family. The terms were brutal. 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. availability. No days off. Minimal pay. Modern slavery disguised as employment. I signed it, knowing we needed more time to build our case. Mrs. Walker filed it away, satisfied. She reminded me that any deviation would result in immediate consequences for both me and Mom. The Prescott family called that afternoon, eager to discuss my upcoming duties. Mrs. Prescott's voice dripped with false sweetness as she outlined my responsibilities: cooking, cleaning, childcare, and educational support for their 3 children. That evening, I met with Georgia and Lisa again. We created an encrypted group chat, slowly adding other victims we'd identified. Each had similar stories, similar threats holding them captive. Amy Martinez joined our group. Class of 2019, she revealed Mrs. Walker had been running this scheme since at least 2017 when she arrived at our school. Amy now worked as a night cleaner, her dreams of becoming a doctor destroyed. We discovered Mrs. Walker's system. She identified brilliant scholarship students, isolated them through the work-study program, used them to boost wealthy students' academics, then disposed of them after graduation. The wealthy families paid handsomely for their children's success. Jasmine created anonymous social media accounts to start documenting our stories. She was careful to protect our identities while highlighting the pattern of exploitation. The hashtag #work-study scandal began trending locally. Wednesday brought a breakthrough. While tutoring Naomi, I noticed her mother's laptop open on the kitchen counter. The QuickBooks screen showed payments to Mrs. Walker, $50,000 per year for educational consulting. The dates matched when students were placed in service. I photographed the screen discreetly. Only 12 wealthy families used Mrs. Walker's services, all major donors to the school. The financial web was becoming clear. Mrs. Walker grew nervous as social media attention increased. She scheduled more frequent check-ins, demanding to know if I'd been talking to anyone. I assured her of my cooperation while secretly documenting every interaction. 2 teachers approached me quietly after class. They'd suspected something for years, noticing how certain students' work improved dramatically without corresponding understanding. They offered to speak off record about their observations. The janitor network proved invaluable. Mr. Rodriguez and his colleagues had witnessed years of crying scholarship students, late-night cleaning sessions, and suspicious meetings. They'd kept logs, noting patterns others missed. Thursday, a local journalist received an anonymous tip about the scandal. Jasmine had crafted it carefully, providing just enough information to spark interest without exposing individual victims. Mrs. Walker cornered me between library stacks that afternoon. She hissed demands about Naomi's English paper while trying to appear casual to passing students. A freshman filmed the interaction from behind nearby shelves, capturing her threatening demeanor. I refused to write Naomi's final paper, offering instead to actually teach her. Mrs. Walker's face contorted with rage, but she couldn't escalate without drawing attention. The balance of power was shifting. That night, Mom attended a parent conference with Mrs. Walker. The counselor's printer jammed during their meeting. As Mom helped clear it, she glimpsed draft letters of recommendation with suspiciously specific acceptance predictions written months before applications were due. Friday brought the Prescott deadline. The family arrived at our home, expecting my grateful acceptance of their generous offer. Instead, I played them a recording of Mrs. Walker admitting she'd hidden my MIT acceptance. The Prescott's faces went pale as they realized their daughter's achievements were purchased, not earned. They left quickly, distancing themselves from Mrs. Walker's scheme. More families began questioning their children's sudden academic struggles without their tutors. The carefully constructed system was crumbling. Mrs. Walker's threats escalated. She prepared official documentation recommending my transfer for mental health reasons, paperwork that would follow any college applications. But the school registrar, suspicious of the sudden recommendation, called Mom to confirm. The exposure of this threat proved pivotal. The registrar had noticed patterns. Brilliant scholarship students suddenly developing mental health issues requiring transfers. She agreed to delay processing any paperwork. Saturday, 3 former teachers agreed to speak with the journalist about suspicious patterns they'd observed. One had kept detailed notes about scholarship students who vanished after showing extraordinary promise. The school board member's daughter made a confession. Her Stanford essay had been written by last year's scholarship student. The admission came after her parents noticed she couldn't explain basic concepts from her supposed work. Local news ran their first story about concerns at the elite private school. Though names weren't mentioned, Mrs. Walker's photo was visible in background footage. The pressure was mounting. Our victim support group grew to 7 members. We met at a community center, sharing evidence and strategies. Each story revealed new depths to Mrs. Walker's exploitation. Mrs. Walker made her biggest mistake that weekend. She sent emails to all victims, threatening to destroy our futures if anyone spoke publicly. But we were already destroyed. Working minimum wage, dreams stolen, futures derailed. We had nothing left to lose. The wealthy families began pressuring the school board to bury the investigation. They feared for their children's college admissions if the fraud was exposed. But their panic only confirmed the scheme's existence. I presented our timeline to the school board in a closed session. The correlation between Mrs. Walker's arrival, suspicious academic improvements, and missing scholarship students was undeniable. The financial records Naomi's mother had inadvertently revealed showed the monetary scope. The board voted to investigate Mrs. Walker's work-study program. However, several members worried about scandal damaging the school's reputation. They preferred a quiet resolution. Mrs. Walker played her final card. She threatened to expose every wealthy family's child as a fraud, mutual destruction that would devastate the school's reputation, and dozens of students' futures. The board hesitated, fearing the fallout. 2 victims from our group backed out of testifying, terrified of retaliation. The alliance we'd built began fracturing under institutional pressure. I faced a choice: proceed alone or protect the others. Mom supported whatever decision I made. Together, we weighed the costs of going public versus accepting defeat. The other victims deserve justice, but they also deserve protection from further harm. I chose to go public, contacting the investigative journalist directly. The story needed to be told, even if I stood alone. The exploitation had to end. The story broke Sunday night. College Dreams for Sale exposed the 8-year scheme, focusing on systematic exploitation rather than individual students. I'd asked the journalist to protect innocent victims while exposing the system. Mrs. Walker arrived at our home Monday morning for an emergency meeting. Unknown to her, the reporter waited 1 street over, listening via phone as I'd arranged. I presented 8 years of evidence while Mrs. Walker claimed she'd helped ungrateful children. Her facade crumbled as she realized her leverage was gone. Without student victims to blame, her house of cards collapsed. The Prescott family preemptively admitted to purchasing essays, protecting Naomi from exposure while distancing themselves from Mrs. Walker. Other families followed suit, choosing confession over continued complicity. By Tuesday, the school board announced Mrs. Walker's immediate retirement and cancellation of the work-study program. The janitor network ensured she cleared out her office without taking any student files. A scholarship fund was established for affected students, funded by the guilty families. It couldn't restore our lost opportunities, but it offered some measure of justice. Georgia, Lisa, Amy, Amy and the others began rebuilding their lives. We met monthly for dinner, supporting each other as we pursued new dreams. Our MIT, Columbia, and Stanford acceptances were gone, but our futures weren't. I enrolled at the State University, pursuing engineering without debt. The dreams were smaller but freer. Mom framed both acceptance letters, the stolen one and the earned one, as reminders that no institution owns your future. Mrs. Walker's teaching certification came under review. Her LinkedIn showed seeking opportunities for months, then years. The woman who'd controlled so many futures found herself with none. The private school instituted transparent scholarship programs under federal oversight. The new policies protected vulnerable students from exploitation. Real change came slowly, but it came. Naomi sent an apology letter from Yale, admitting she'd known but was too comfortable to care. Her honesty surprised me. Perhaps facing the truth about her achievements had sparked genuine growth. I returned to tutoring at the public library, watching for vulnerable students. When I spotted talented kids from struggling families, I shared our story as a warning. Knowledge became protection. The investigation revealed Mrs. Walker had collected over $400,000 from wealthy families over 8 years. Tax implications surfaced, adding financial crimes to her exploitation. Justice came through unexpected channels. Some nights I wondered what MIT would have been like, but surrounded by fellow survivors at our monthly dinners, I realized we'd built something Mrs. Walker never expected, a community of resilience. The other scholarship students she'd trapped began reaching out. We helped them reclaim their narratives, pursue new paths, and heal from years of exploitation. Our shared trauma became shared strength. Georgia's testimony shook the boardroom. Her voice cracked as she described losing her Columbia spot, years of silence crushing her spirit. The board members shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact as she detailed the exploitation system. Documentation spread across the conference table showed $400,000 in payments from wealthy families to Mrs. Walker over 8 years. The financial trail was undeniable, each payment corresponding to a scholarship student's placement. Tax implications began surfacing as board members realized the scope. I researched MIT's deferred enrollment policies between meetings. The website indicated I could potentially defer my hidden acceptance for up to 2 years, though the deadline had long passed. Still, I documented everything for potential appeals. The school board privately concluded Mrs. Walker must be removed. Their whispered conversations revealed their primary concern, avoiding scandal that would damage the school's reputation. They wanted a quiet resignation, not public exposure. Mrs. Walker played her final card during an emergency session. She stood at the podium, calmly threatening to expose every wealthy family's child as a fraud. The mutual destruction option hung in the air, dozens of students' college admissions at risk. Several wealthy families immediately began pressuring the board. Phone calls flooded in from major donors, each demanding the investigation be buried. Their children's Yale and Princeton acceptances depended on maintaining the lie. 2 former victims from our group suddenly backed out of testifying. Fear of retaliation overwhelmed their desire for justice. Our carefully built alliance began fracturing under institutional pressure. The group chat went silent. I sat with Mom that evening weighing options. She held my hand as we discussed proceeding alone against the entire system. Her support never wavered, even as the risks mounted. She reminded me that some battles are worth fighting alone. The decision crystallized as I reviewed our evidence. 8 years of exploitation couldn't continue. Oh boy, Mrs. Walker really thought she had everyone in checkmate with that "I'll expose all the rich kids" move. I love how the wealthy families suddenly started sweating bullets and speed dialing the board. Nothing quite like watching comfortable people get uncomfortable when their kids' fancy college spots are on the line. I contacted the investigative journalist directly, providing full access to our documentation. The story needed to be told, even if I stood as the sole source. Sunday night, college dreams for sale broke on local news. The expose focused on systematic exploitation, rather than naming individual students. I'd insisted on protecting other victims while exposing the corrupt system. Mrs. Walker's car pulled into our driveway Monday morning. She demanded an emergency meeting, unaware that I'd positioned the reporter's car 1 street over. My phone, hidden but recording, connected to his as she entered our home. I spread 8 years of evidence across our kitchen table. Photos, emails, financial records, and victim testimonies painted an undeniable picture. Mrs. Walker's confident facade began cracking as she realized the extent of our preparation. She attempted her usual manipulation, claiming she'd helped ungrateful children achieve beyond their capabilities. But without student victims to blame or blackmail to leverage, her arguments fell flat. The power dynamic had finally shifted. Mrs. Walker revealed she possessed college fraud evidence on half the school board's children. Her desperation showed. This wasn't calculated strategy, but panicked retaliation. She'd lost control of the narrative. Mom emerged from the hallway, revealing she'd been recording on the laptop I'd given her for work. Following my earlier advice about documentation, she'd captured Mrs. Walker's threats and admissions. The counselor's face went white. I faced a choice between clean victory and protecting innocent students caught in the scandal. After a moment's consideration, I agreed to focus the story on systemic exploitation, rather than individual students. Mercy felt more powerful than revenge. Mrs. Walker realized her leverage had evaporated. Without student victims to blame or reputations to destroy, her carefully constructed scheme collapsed. Her shoulders sagged as the weight of exposure settled in. The Prescott family preemptively admitted to purchasing essays. Their public statement acknowledged their role while protecting Naomi from individual exposure. Other families quickly followed, choosing controlled confession over investigation. Mrs. Walker's final threat about my future in education fell flat. I revealed my acceptance to the State University. Smaller dreams but honest ones. Her power to destroy futures had ended. Tuesday brought swift institutional action. The school board announced Mrs. Walker's immediate retirement and complete cancellation of the work-study program. The language was carefully crafted to minimize scandal while ensuring change. Mrs. Walker cleared out her office Tuesday night. The janitor network monitored her every move, ensuring she took nothing but personal items. Mr. Rodriguez personally checked that all student files remained secure. A scholarship fund emerged from negotiations with guilty families. Their financial contributions would support affected students, not full restitution, but acknowledgement of harm. The fund would be administered by independent trustees. I began freshman orientation at the State University that fall. The campus was smaller than MIT, the programs less prestigious, but the education was mine. No hidden obligations, no servitude, just honest opportunity. Naomi's letter arrived in October. Written from Yale, she admitted knowing about the exploitation, but being too comfortable to care. Her honesty surprised me. Perhaps exposure had sparked genuine self-reflection. Our survivor group continued meeting monthly. Georgia found work as a medical technician while taking night classes. Lisa enrolled in community college for accounting. Amy started her own cleaning business, treating employees fairly. Mrs. Walker's LinkedIn profile showed seeking opportunities for 2 years. Her teaching certification remained under review as investigations continued. The woman who'd controlled futures now faced an uncertain one herself. The private school instituted transparent scholarship programs under federal oversight. New policies protected vulnerable students from exploitation. Independent monitors reviewed all work-study assignments. Real change came through policy, not just personnel. I returned to tutoring at the public library, watching for vulnerable students. When talented protected kids from struggling families appeared. I shared our story as a warning. Knowledge about exploitation tactics became their protection. Tax investigations into Mrs. Walker's unreported income added financial crimes to her exploitation charges. Justice came through unexpected channels. The IRS proved more effective than educational oversight boards. Some evenings, I wondered about MIT's halls and labs, but surrounded by fellow survivors at our dinners, I recognized we'd built something valuable, a community of resilience that Mrs. Walker never anticipated. Other scholarship students began reaching out through social media. We helped them reclaim their narratives and pursue new paths. Our shared trauma transformed into collective strength and mutual support. The investigation's final report documented systematic exploitation spanning 8 years, 7 students directly affected, dozens more tangentially involved. The scope shocked even those who'd suspected problems. Local news coverage sparked similar investigations at other private schools. The work study scandal became a cautionary tale about power dynamics in education. Change rippled outward from our stand. Mrs. Walker attempted to relocate to another state, but news of the scandal followed her. No school would risk hiring her. Her decades-long career in education had definitively ended. Spring brought unexpected hope. The state university's engineering program offered research opportunities I'd never imagined. Smaller didn't mean lesser, just different paths to similar goals. Mom framed both acceptance letters in our living room, the stolen MIT letter beside the earned State University one. They served as daily reminders that institutions don't own futures. We do. Georgia passed her nursing entrance exams. Lisa received her accounting certificate. Amy's business expanded to 3 crews. We celebrated each milestone together, proof that dreams could be rebuilt. The Prescott family moved away quietly. Their donation to the scholarship fund was the largest, perhaps attempting to purchase absolution. Naomi never contacted me again after her single letter. 2 years later, Mrs. Walker's name appeared in a small news item. She'd been arrested for attempting a similar scheme at a tutoring center. Old habits died hard, but this time authorities were watching. Our monthly dinners evolved into a support network for exploited students nationwide. We created resources, shared strategies, and offered hope to those still trapped. Our pain became purpose. The private school's new policies became a model for others. Federal oversight ensured work-study programs remained educational, not exploitative. The changes we'd fought for spread beyond our single institution. I graduated with honors from the State University. The ceremony felt more meaningful than MIT would have. This achievement was entirely mine. Mom cried as I walked across the stage. Years passed. Georgia became a nurse. Lisa opened her own accounting firm. Amy's cleaning company employed dozens. I worked as an engineer at a local firm. Smaller dreams, yes, but authentically ours. Mrs. Walker faded from relevance. Occasional updates showed continued failed attempts to return to education. Her legacy became a cautionary tale about power and exploitation in academic settings. The scholarship fund grew through additional donations. Dozens of students received support, attending college without hidden obligations. Each success story validated our difficult choice to speak out. Mom kept those 2 framed letters until she passed. They reminded us both that stolen dreams could be replaced with earned ones. That institutions might have power, but individuals have resilience. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I'd choose differently. Would I take MIT knowing the cost? But surrounded by fellow survivors who became lifelong friends, I know the answer. Some prices are too high, some victories too hollow. We built something real from the ruins of exploitation, careers earned honestly, friendships forged through struggle, and futures that belong to us alone. Mrs. Walker stole our dreams, but not our ability to dream. In the end, that made all the difference. Interesting story. Don't have much to say about this ending. Guess I'll just see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.